Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we're going to tackle one of the most feared diseases of our time, Alzheimer's. But here's the thing, we're going to look at it through a completely new lens, using some incredible insights from a summit of leading health experts. So I want you to forget everything you think you know, because we're about to reframe this entire conversation.
First, just to get a sense of the scale of what we're up against, get a load of this statistic. Every 3 seconds, somewhere in the world, a new person is diagnosed with Alzheimer's or dementia. I mean, it's the 6th leading cause of death, and it kills more people than breast cancer and prostate cancer combined. The urgency to really understand this disease has never, ever been greater.
So, this leads us to the big question, really the core of what we're talking about today. For decades, we've kind of been sold this story that it's just a genetic time bomb, right? A cruel twist of fate that we can't do anything about. But after spending billions on research, conventional medicine still has no cure. So what if we've been looking at this whole problem completely wrong?
To start, we have to make a huge shift in our thinking. We need to fundamentally rethink what Alzheimer's disease actually is. Because according to a growing number of experts, it is not what we've been told.
You know, for years, this stuff called amyloid plaque has been painted as the ultimate villain, this toxic gunk that just clogs up the brain. But this new expert view completely flips that idea on its head. What if it's actually a protective response? Think of it less like the cause of the disease and more like a scab. You wouldn't just scrape off a scab without asking, hey, what caused the injury underneath? The scab is a sign the body is trying to heal.
And as a leading researcher in this field, Dr. Dale Bradison puts it so simply, the brain is producing this amyloid for a reason. You know, that one little idea changes everything. The question isn't just, how do we get rid of the plaque? The real question is, what is it protecting the brain from?
Well, the research is pointing to 3 main categories of threats. First up, invading microbes. It turns out amyloid is actually a potent antimicrobial. It's like the brain's own antibiotic. Second, chronic inflammation, especially the kind that's fired up by too much sugar. And third, toxic substances, things like mercury from old dental fillings or aluminum, which the amyloid can literally grab onto and wall off. So you see, the plaque is the symptom, not the root cause.
So if the brain is defending itself, what's the biggest, most common threat? Well, of all the factors, one just stands out as maybe the most significant: the fuel we give our brain. And this leads to a pretty startling concept that completely reframes the entire disease.
You've heard of type 1 and type 2 diabetes, right? Well, for years now, some scientists have been calling Alzheimer's type 3 diabetes. And here's why. Just like type 2 diabetes is when your body's cells become resistant to insulin, type 3 is when your brain cells become resistant to insulin. What that means is the brain is literally being starved of its main fuel, glucose, and that causes brain cells to die.
And you can see this damage happening right down at the molecular level. When you have too much sugar, it creates these sticky compounds, and they have the perfect acronym, AGEs, which stands for Advanced Glycation End Products. These AGEs cause massive inflammation. They damage your neurons, and they literally physically age your brain.
But look, it's not just about sugar. Your brain is mostly made of fat, so the type of fat you eat is absolutely critical. You've got what the experts call smart fats and dumb fats. The smart fats, like omega-3s, are the actual building blocks for your brain cells. The dumb fats, like trans fats and those highly processed vegetable oils, well, they do the opposite. They're inflammatory, and they actively damage your brain.
And just how important are those smart fats? Well, get this. According to Dr. Stephen Masley, if you were to take all the water out of your brain, about 40% of its remaining weight is one specific omega-3 fat called DHA. So this isn't just some optional nutrient, okay? It is a fundamental, structural component of your brain.
Okay, so diet is huge, absolutely critical, but it is only part of the story. The brain is also under this constant slow-motion attack from a whole host of hidden environmental factors that we often overlook.
I want you to just think about a lifetime of slow, steady accumulation. We are talking about heavy metals from things like dental fillings and cookware, pesticides on our food, chronic hidden infections from things like tick bites or even poor dental health, and of course, pollutants in our air and water. You know, these things don't cause a problem overnight. They just build and build for decades.
And here is the absolutely crucial point that most people miss. It's what scientists call synergistic toxicity. When it comes to your brain, 1 + 1 does not equal 2. It can equal 10 or 100.
For example, some old studies on rats showed that a low dose of mercury by itself was pretty harmless. A low dose of aluminum, same thing. But when you combine those two harmless doses, it was lethal to all the rats. That's synergy.
So why are older brains so much more vulnerable to all this stuff? Dr. Russell Blaylock uses this brilliant analogy. He says as we age, our brain's immune cells, they're called microglia, they get primed. So think of a car with the engine revving really high, but it's still in park. It's just ready to go. And then even a tiny trigger, a small infection, a new toxic exposure, can cause that car to just lurch forward and crash, creating massive, destructive inflammation.
All right, now we come to what might just be the most surprising piece of the whole puzzle. Because the latest science is showing us that brain health, well, it actually starts in your gut, your second brain.
Let's just walk through this pathway because it's so important. It all starts with inflammation in your gut, usually from foods like gluten and sugar. This damages the gut lining, creating what we call leaky gut. Now toxins and undigested food can leak into your bloodstream, which triggers a body-wide immune response. This widespread inflammation eventually damages the super tight barrier that protects your brain, leading to a leaky brain. And now all those harmful substances can get in, activating those microglia we just talked about, and causing all that destructive inflammation.
And if you think that's wild, get this, it gets even more direct. Researchers have now found that misfolded proteins, which are a hallmark of brain disease, can actually be created first in an unhealthy gut. And from there, they can travel directly up the vagus nerve, which is like a superhighway connecting your gut and your brain, and literally seed disease in the brain itself. So yeah, what happens in the gut does not stay in the gut.
So we have outlined a really complex problem, right? With all these different causes intersecting. And I know it can feel overwhelming. But this new understanding is also incredibly empowering, because for the first time, it reveals a clear path forward. And here is the one unified message from every single expert in this summit. Because Alzheimer's isn't caused by one single thing, it will never, ever be cured by one single magic bullet pill. The solution has to be just as comprehensive as the problem. It has to address the entire system, not just one isolated symptom. So this leads us to the pillars of a brain-healthy lifestyle. It's about fueling your brain correctly with that anti-inflammatory, low-sugar diet that's packed with smart fats. It's about lowering your toxic burden. It's about healing your gut. And of course, it's about those foundational things we all know are important. Consistent exercise, managing our stress, and getting deep restorative sleep, which, by the way, is when your brain does its nightly cleaning.
Which brings us right back to our original question about genes. Well, according to experts like Dr. Stephen Lewis, the true, genetically driven familial Alzheimer's, it accounts for less than 2% of all cases. For the other 98% of us, our genes are not our destiny. Let me say that again. For 98% of people, this is not primarily a genetic disease. It is a lifestyle and environmental disease.
And that really is the final thought here. That whole story of genetic doom and gloom is collapsing. The science is showing us that the power to shape your brain's future is far more in your hands than you have ever been led to believe. So the question is no longer, what's written in my genes? The real question is, what will you choose to write instead?